everyone remembers their first convention. Comics, furries, something a bit more specialized like pinball or theater. There's something thrilling about being surrounded by the people who share your passions at a hotel where all the rules are out the window, just for a weekend. What happens there stays there. Unfortunately, this episode is not going to be about our fond memories of the mini-cons we've attended. This past week, I watched 24 videos from NatalCon 2025. And now it's time for you to hear about it. My name is Josh Borman.
I'm June Sternbach.
And this is Ill Conceived, the podcast about natalism. Well, June, I often say at the beginning of these episodes, here we are. But really, here we are. I'm looking at you right in the eyes right now. I'm staring you the fuck down.
This is crazy. Not through a screen. We're 1 foot away from each other. This is crazy.
Wild.
I love a podcasting in person situation. This is
great.
Like my third, like not a live show situation, but like a third in person. It's always so nice. I wish
really
I could do every episode like this, frankly.
I know. There really, nothing beats recording in person. You can hang out. You can drink some delicious micheladas.
Yeah, I found out we're both 3-drink optimists, is what I'm deciding to call it.
The 3-drink rule.
Yeah. Water, you got to have your hydration.
That's
alcohol,
right.
and something, like I have in Arizona, you have a little energy drink situation.
Yeah, it's the way I put the 3-drink rule is it's 1 for hydration, 1 for business, and 1 for pleasure. And that's key. You got to have it.
I live by that rule every day.
Yeah.
Every recording.
It rules to live by. Fuck you, Jordan Peterson. My rules are better. But, now that we're here together in person, I gotta ask, how have you felt so far about the way that things have been going for the show? Because, we just today, as of when we are recording, this will be a few days ago as of when you're listening to this, listener, but we just got quoted in Vanity Fair in an article about natalists.
About trad wives. But ultimately, the article talks a little bit about the natalist ideology and the right-wing sort of sphere that we, I think, with this show sort of cover pretty in depth, or at least try to. And it's been really fucking cool to I guess we're experts now. We're the experts we've aspired to be, and we're being. So I think we'll probably put it in the description. It's a very, very good article about trad wives in particular. Go read it. Go check it out.
Aaron Vanderhoof from Vanity Fair shouts out to Aaron. It's cool because I felt very, I don't know, again, maybe gassing myself up or whatever, but...
Gas yourself up,
Yeah, it was June Sternbach and Josh Borman realized that the left needed an answer to this question of natalism. It's I'm the expert now.
We were, I think we did find something that was happening in these right-wing spaces a lot. They were talking about natalism. The topic we're talking about today is NatalCon 2025. They had a previous NatalCon in 2023, which we'll get more to. But the right has been very intentional about this, and I feel like us included until very recently sort of missed it. It flew under the radar almost entirely. No one even talked about it.
Well, and something that I think we're going to talk about in the episode today is how this is, in a lot of ways, something that still kind of feels fringe insofar as there weren't very many people at NatalCon, either the 2023 edition or the 2025 edition. But this is a movement that has the ear of the President of the United States. The point of conventions like this is less to do with the really cool lectures that we're going to talk about today. I mean,
very cool.
They're interesting insofar as it gives you a sense of what they're talking about and how they're talking about it. But the thing that is really important about this is the way that it allows people who are similarly minded to come together and form organizing power around a movement, at least in theory.
I assume, or I guess the way I think of it, it's essentially the Illuminati of this sphere of thinker. If you want to call them thinkers, that's giving them a little too much credit. But this is essentially the people that are pulling the strings, the narratives. They are influencing the president, people under the president, social media narratives. It's these people are a lot of the people that are driving a lot of that. And I think it's important to at least sort of acknowledge and talk about and like drill down to see what they're saying.
Right. And I think that in our first set of episodes, which I think I'm sort of thinking of everything up to the homeschooling episode as being like our first season, essentially, of the show.
Yeah.
I guess now we're going into the second season of Ill-Conceived, such as it is, where now, rather than just looking at the mostly Christian ideological side of the movement, we are looking at the contemporary movers and shakers, many of whom are, of course, Christians, but the way that they are then interacting with really weird online guys and turning this thing from just sort of a loose collection of people who share an ideology in common into an actual honest to goodness structured movement, or at least they're trying to do that.
Yeah, and that's what's sort of interesting is it's like really good. I'm doing like not good because I think they're good, but like good conservative Christians, like, you know, they go to church, they are Catholics, they really believe in like that world of religion. With people like raw egg nationalists.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, weird, like the weirdest fucking freaks out there with like average conservative Christian linking up in a really weird way. Like this, I cannot believe some of the crossover this had.
And so if you're interested in hearing more about, you know, all these strange guys and how they connect, stay tuned because we're going to be digging into that. But before we do, we gotta do our world famous segment.
You know,
June.
I gotta say that Vanity Fair piece really good, and I'm like honored that we were interviewed for that. But I'm a little disappointed that they didn't mention the world famous mailbag.
It is world famous. I think because it's world famous, it's like, why would you mention it? Everybody already knows about it, right?
They see Ill-Conceived, the mailbag.
Oh yeah, the show with the mailbag, of course.
Ill-Conceived, a podcast about mailbags.
So I've got a letter here from an anonymous listener who says, "Dear June and Josh."
Another one for me.
Another one for June. Awesome show. Great job. Oh, actually, I'm realizing this is all one. It's like Tim and Eric. Dear June and Josh, awesome show. Great job. Please excuse me if this email sounds slightly disjointed, but English is my second language after all. I have a simple question about natalism from the perspective of being Finnish. You might know about the natal packages every new mother receives when they give birth, and about the free school lunches children get in Finland, as well as the more pro-child policies Nordic countries have. I was wondering if United States would institute policies that would make it easier for parents to deal with the cost of having children, like the aforementioned examples. Would natalists just move the goalposts and say that even with these policies that make it easier for people to have children, people aren't having enough children? Thank you for that letter. Do you have any thoughts on that, June?
We haven't really done a huge episode in depth with like pro-natalist policies. The most we touched on any of this was the Lyman Stone episode,
right?
Where he's that's basically his main thing is talking about pro-natalist policies, and he even admits himself that there's really not like a policy answer. So I don't even think like natalists already, and like no country in the world has really found like policies will get any population to have the birth rate that natalists desire, like that 2.1 replacement rate, as they call it. I don't think it would like bring the United States up to that. I don't think any European country is at that point. So I don't think a lot of these, especially evangelical natalists, are even thinking about these policies as a solution.
It kind of depends. And the reason I was interested in this letter is that one of the things that we are going to be talking about in today's episode are some of these proposed policy solutions, because at NatalCon, the idea was, at least the stated goal was, let's bring all of these people together so that we can figure out solutions. And I will say, in my estimation, at least going from what we were able to see, they don't have a lot in the way of actual concrete solutions that they agree on. At this time, at least, it seems like the movement is pretty fragmented. But with that said, we didn't get the opportunity to actually be there and sit in on the fucking Bohemian Grove session or whatever that you have to spend $1,000 to get into.
God, I wish we could have been there.
Where the whole thing is off the record. Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Next year we got. Every episode we talk about some sort of event in the sphere. I'm always like, we gotta fucking go next time.
I don't want to go to Texas.
I want to go to NatalCon 2026. I'm still gonna pull for that. That's gonna be my goal.
Whether we go to NatalCon or not, I think that to answer the question more directly, some people, I think, would absolutely move the goalposts and be like, well, we have this in place, but it's not enough. The problem is that because there is not a clear cause and effect relationship with these policies, it's not like, as you were saying, June, it's not like you can point to any particular silver bullet for this kind of thing. And on top of that, you have to consider that a lot of these people, being like hyper-libertarian types, are very uninterested in having the government spend money at all, even if it is for potentially policies that would align with their goals.
Yeah, and I think that's very clear in watching a lot of these these different talks. I think we watched about at least half of all of the talks, which there was a lot of fucking talks.
I watched most of them. I watched at least 20.
I think I watched about half of that. But a theme that I think as we continue this episode, you'll notice, the listeners, is that while there is like a handful of these like policy idea guys, a lot of them sort of start to divulge a little bit into far right ideology, religion, social pressure.
Yeah.
So it's the ideas people, they don't have that single solution. They readily admit that. And I think that's what makes this whole topic of natalism fairly interesting, especially to me, is because I like to learn. I like to know things. I love knowing.
Yeah.
I love knowing, and no one fucking knows. And I want to know. So I want to learn. I want to maybe see what would do it, like just out of pure curiosity.
Well, as we now move into sort of the meat of the episode, as a reminder, we love hearing your thoughts, your emails. Send them to illconceivedpod@gmail.com. And you might even be world famous yourself if you do that, because that's what happens when you're in a world famous segment, of course, is you also become world famous. This
Absolutely.
goes without saying.
It's a handshake situation.
You have achieved the secret handshake. But I want to start with a man named Kevin Dolan. Now, had you heard of Kevin before we cracked into looking at NatalCon?
Never. This is a brand new guy for me, and that's rare. I feel like I know most of the guys. Never heard of him.
Yeah, neither had I. And he writes under the pseudonym Bennett's Phylactery.
I don't think I've seen that. It's possible, but I don't think I have before.
His on Twitter is ExtraDeadJCB. He's got about 100,000 followers on there. And he is, well, I'm not going to describe him. Instead, June, I'm going to have you read this excerpt from an article that he wrote on his Substack in July 2021.
Maybe you've lived in a racially mixed neighborhood. Most of the time, this is fine. It was even fine in most such places last summer, during the race riots. Your kids played together. You watched the fireworks on the 4th of July together. You hung out by the pool together. It was pretty easy to deduce where people stood, and you had to leave some things unsaid. But everybody minded their business and just got along fine. To the extent that pluralism works at all, that's how it has to work. There has never been a national conversation about anything ever, and if someone demanded that you have it out with all your neighbors in a place like that, or simply revealed all of the private opinions that each group's expressed within their own communities, there's no question that there would be violence.
First thoughts.
Very concerning when you say most of the time living in a diverse area is fine. Because I don't think for me that's ever been a problem. I don't see why that would be a problem, but that's concerning that the first thing he mentions here is that like it could be fine. It's like that's on his mind. That's a very concerning thing for him, clearly.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts about this. First thought is I was in Brooklyn living in a majority black neighborhood at the time on the 4th of July in 2020. And what he is implying here is that we don't talk about things because we all actually just want to like kill each other.
Apparently.
He seems to really hold to this idea that there is that everybody holds underlying animosity, and not animosity that can be chalked up to very real systems and structures of like societal violence, but out of, I guess, personal bias and bigotry, because that's how these people sort of always reduce everything.
It's that thing that right-wingers seem to consistently do of every accusation is a confession, frankly. Yeah.
Well, and to the point of every accusation being a confession, what I think is most remarkable, let's put it this way. It is a wild fucking thing to say in July 2020 that there would be violence just like, what, a month after fucking George Floyd got killed by Derek Chauvin. That's crazy. Not there would be violence, there is violence. And there has been violence. And I don't know if you remember that right after George Floyd was murdered, even among like right-wingers, the general consensus was that guy went too far. By that guy, I mean Derek Chauvin went too far.
I remember this. I mean, that was very common sentiment at the time. A lot of right-wingers I knew at that time, and like very local to me, the whole Kyle Rittenhouse situation.
Yes.
I forget who he shot. He shot a couple of people, actually.
Were you in Kenosha at the time?
I was in Kenosha at the time.
Wow.
And so, even there, like in that situation, even conservatives in a rather like politically diverse county, it swung for Trump in 2 elections. Even a lot of Trump supporters there were like, this is going too far. We need to like there was a coming together moment.
Right.
This seems to be rewriting a world that didn't actually exist. There was no animosity. There was no public animosity against people in the communities that all of these things were happening. And there was actually a lot of coming together.
That is exactly what my memory is too. Is that because of the twin forces of the pandemic and then the sort of response of the Black Lives Matter movement. Yes, there were tensions, but it was all with the sense of these are underlying problems that we have the potential to at least try to start to solve. Whereas he's like, there's never been a national conversation about anything, because his belief is that to have such a conversation would be fruitless.
Also, a really subtle thing that he does here that a lot of people, even a lot of liberals, tend to do is the presupposition that the state enacting violence isn't actually violence. And he does that very clearly here. It's like he says there would be violence, completely ignoring that state police violence is what kicked almost this entire thing off for over a decade at that point.
It's not disagreements between neighbors.
No, it's not.
I mean, sometimes disagreements between neighbors lead to police violence when you fucking call the cops on your neighbors. But that's very different from what he's talking about here.
Right.
So,
the way he frames this entire period is it's just it's a false reality of what actually happened. When did he write this? You said 2021?
This was July 2021. And the reason that he wrote this post is that he was big mad because he got doxxed right around that time.
Oh, my God.
Because up until this point, he was writing fully pseudonymously. Nobody knew who he was. But after the doxing, everybody knew that this is, in fact, Kevin Dolan, the man. And with that in mind, he started freaking out. You can go read a bunch of these Substack posts from this time. He is panicked. And one of the things that he was panicked about was that people found out what his deal was, which is that he was a hardcore deseret nationalist. Now, do you know about the Desnats at all?
I don't. This is actually another brand new thing. I love learning a new guy and a new weird type of freak ideology. That's 2 for 2. That's incredible. Great day so far.
So Desnats are, it's a pretty, it doesn't mean just one thing. It can mean different things to different people, but something that basically all Desnats have in common is that they're fascists and they're Mormons.
Okay.
It is Mormon fascism is what deseret nationalism is. In a lot of cases, Desnats do believe that most or all of Utah should secede as a separate nation state, which would then be governed under Mormon religious law.
Wow. So he's like what this would be. I know a little bit of like the Mormons' history on their journey from their origins, I think close to the East Coast, all the way to Utah, the way that the government attacked them in different ways, forced them out into Utah. But so he's like a true original ideological Mormon, like in the true political and religious sense.
Yeah. We could do a whole episode about Desnats. It would be sort of connected in a lot of ways because having big families, of course, has always been a pillar of Mormon thought.
Oh, yeah.
And for these people in particular, they see reproduction as one of the key ways to increase a God-given mandate, essentially, to build a new nation. It's actually not dissimilar from religious Zionism in that there is this sense of we have this claim on this territory that is rightfully ours as prescribed by our holy text, which is to say the Book of Mormon in their case, obviously. And we must, therefore, protect it from other governments and run it as a traditionalist religious theocracy.
It's kind of insane that we just sort of have one of these factions in one of the states, and it's just the majority religion. They sort of run the entire state. And I don't actually know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I assume they're growing because they still do to this day have large families.
Well, they're outbreeding. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they're kind of a weirdly successful type of, like, probably the most successful American version of, like, the Natalist project, if I had to say.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing that you might not hear about if you don't live in Utah or, like, Idaho. But they are a major force to be reckoned with out there.
Yeah. I mean, culturally, too, not even just religiously. I mean, we talked a little bit on the show, the Tradwife episode. They are intentionally outputting cultural content to consume as like a under the radar sort of a propaganda.
And in a lot of cases, doing it in a way where you don't necessarily know who they are. Again, this guy was writing under a pseudonym. He didn't want people to know who he was. And once people found out who he was, he got fired.
Oh, what did he do before?
So I've got an article here from the Austin Chronicle. This is from December of 2023, and I'll just read it. Dolan was fired from his job as a data scientist in 2021 after being doxxed and exposed as the man behind the Twitter persona @ExtraDeadJCB, The Guardian reported in September. That handle is also listed on the conference website for NatalCon as Dolan's. He often tweets about keeping immigrants out of the U.S. In a 2019 tweet, he told a commenter who claimed Apache ancestry that he's, quote, lucky we let you live in Arizona, end quote, because the Apaches, quote, got royally butt raped by Whitey, LOL, better keep a bag packed, we're building the wall, end quote. Just a few months ago, he retweeted a video suggesting black people move back to Africa and wrote, quote, this is probably the closest thing to a practicable solution to the race problem in America, end quote.
So he's a real far right fascist type guy. Yeah, wow. This is crazy.
This guy is a racist, not in the pejorative sense, but in the sense that that racial animus drives the core of his politics.
Which it makes his accusation before make a lot more sense within context. I mean, that's exactly how he feels. This is the exact feelings he has to even like Native Americans.
Yeah.
He believes in remigration.
Yes.
Which, interestingly, and maybe not so surprisingly these days, is also what the United States government on social media under several different handles has been tweeting. Just the phrase remigration.
This is official policy of the United States government.
Very concerning.
So the reason that the Austin Chronicle was covering this at all, right, to go back to the article that I was just reading from, was that in December of 2023, when that article came out, Kevin Dolan decided to bring together a whole bunch of people with concerns about the birth rate at the Line Hotel in Austin, Texas, for the very first Natal Conference, NatalCon 2023. And in the materials for this conference, there was on like the website, it claimed that there was no set ideology beyond like, we need to have more kids, right? But The Guardian noted this. There's a good Guardian article that I'll link down in the notes. This claim is somewhat questionable given, like, if you look at the composition of the speakers who were actually there, such as Charles Haywood, whose whole thing is that he's establishing this national network of fraternal lodges with the intention of securing a patronage network so that he will have continuity of power once the United States government collapses.
Oh, of course, obviously.
You got Peachy Keenan, who we're going to be talking about a bit in this episode, who's a anti-feminist homeschooling advocate and comedian in big ol' air quotes. These jokes
we'll judge. We're going to judge.
We'll judge her material, folks. Malcolm and Simone Collins, they have the stupid glasses. And Raw Egg Nationalist, his whole thing is that there are too many toxins and the way for us to improve our bodies is to just do nothing but eat raw eggs, hence the raw egg portion of Nationalist. His work, it should be noted, is published by Antelope Hill, which is an honest-to-goodness neo-Nazi press.
Yeah. So this, you don't see any Matty Iglesiases. You don't really see any of the like liberal face of the people talking about this. So, they say there's no ideology. They even said that in the recent 2025 one, I think in his opening speech that he gave, where it's like, this isn't about ideology. It's like, it kind of is though. Like you watch enough of these and it like kind of is about ideology.
It definitely is about ideology.
It is. Especially because it's like, all right, this guy is not like a bipartisan sort of centrist. Kevin Dolan is like a very clear, like he's more far right than a lot of the guests he has on.
And he's farther right than he presents himself as being.
Yeah.
Which is something that's very interesting, that when he's writing under his pseudonym, when he is Bennett's phylactery, he's quite strident. But then when you can see his face and hear his voice, it's just like, well, I'm just an average dad who cares about his kids.
Yeah. It's something that I've noticed, and like this isn't like a thing just that the right does. Historically, I have used a pseudonym as well, like posting online. Right. Everyone sort of does that for a period, I feel like, at least like these days. But like something I've noticed with the right is a lot of these like Mencius Moldbug, Curtis Yarvin's handle. There's a lot of these people that have these like really odd pseudonyms that still use those pseudonyms to this day.
Some of them use them exclusively.
It's still Kevin Dolan.
Egg Nationalist is only known as Raw Egg Nationalist. I don't know what his name is. Yeah. Maybe it's out there somewhere, but he doesn't
put it out there like that.
Yeah.
And I just went to go check Kevin Dolan's Twitter. It's still branded as Bennett's phylactery.
Yeah. No,
he does not put his name on there.
Exactly.
He does not put his name.
No, because he understands that there is something about linking your real name that does something. And I think that's why with this show, we go by our real names. We're not trying to fucking hide anything. We're not trying to hide the ball about what our real ideology is. We're not trying to launder some sort of secret message. We're just going to keep it at 100 with you and tell you where we are at, which is something that these motherfuckers don't do.
They don't. I'm also imagining a different timeline where we decided to go only by our handles.
Yeah, this is like with Bosch and Juniper. Bosch J and Juniper present.
Yeah, like in the Vanity Fair piece. Bosch says,
according to Juniper. Well, here's another thing too about Bosch and Juniper is that these are, of course, those are our online pseudonyms.
That's us.
We're very online.
Yeah.
And so are these motherfuckers. They are so internet poisoned. It's insane.
I was for a period very worried that I was like doing irreparable harm to my brain being as online as I have been historically. But then I see some of these people. I'm like, oh, I'm like pretty fucking normal. Right. Yeah. I'm like pretty fucking good.
A lot depends on, I think, two things. First of all, it's what circles do you travel in online? And secondly, how do you balance your online life with your offline life?
Right. Very important.
And it is so clear that for these people, there is no separation whatsoever between online and offline. It's the same.
Which is like respectable. And to a degree, I mean, that's how it is for me in some cases, but that's not everything. I don't walk around being like, hey, like, I got a lot of followers on Twitter. Like, I'm not doing that shit.
Listen, you ever hear of Blue Sky?
I'm like, top 100. That's crazy to do that. And that is what I think some of these people absolutely
for sure.
do. Yeah.
For sure. And another commonality between all of these people that you see in the NatalCon 2023, they really don't like immigrants. I went and looked at, they all have Substacks. And I was going to, for this, go through their Substacks and like do some pull quotes and read them. But it's not, like, it all sounds the same. It's all just standard issue boilerplate invective. It's not worth it. If you're interested, feel free to Google any of these people and look at their Substack. You'll just see that it's nothing but posts about how like Latinos love to burn American cities or whatever, or black people have a disproportionate propensity to crime, or like, just the standard shit.
There's one of the like 10 talks that I watched. I'm blanking on who this specifically was, but that guy at one point says very clearly, like, migration is not like, we don't want that.
Right.
He says like, we don't want that.
Don't you care about declining population? Whatever. Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to note real quick is that all of this NatalCon shit has very strong links to the Claremont Institute, which is a conservative think tank that publishes a lot of reactionary shit. And they used to be kind of more like, we're respectable conservatives, but they've really been dipping their toe more into outright fascism lately. So just worth noting.
I think that's an interesting point, though, actually, is that the like sort of overt, in-your-face, fascistic, very, very mean, very far-right ideology, that war was won. Yeah. Like that beat out the like average conservatives that are like normal. Those people just don't really exist anymore. There's not really space for those people.
They became Democrats.
They did. Yeah, they did. Before we move on too far, do you know how many people attended NatalCon 2025? I'm very curious.
23, you mean?
23 or 25?
Yeah, I've actually got an article here from NPR from April, right after NatalCon 25, which stated that there were about 200 attendees.
Okay.
And that was a doubling of the first NatalCon.
Okay.
So 100 people at NatalCon 23, 200 people at NatalCon 25.
Growing ideology, growing conversation, especially among the right.
I mean, maybe. It's genuinely, it's hard to know if that's actually meaningful, you know?
Right.
I guess it is meaningful in the sense that there were more people, but you also have to keep in mind that a lot of the attendees in 2025 were media people.
Right.
And I would assume...
Even in some of them, they actually address like, oh, you're going to write about me or something. Yeah.
And I would assume that they are included in that number of attendees because they want to have the biggest number.
And I guess the interesting thing is, even still, like, even if we acknowledge that, a lot of the people that are attending probably both times are the same people, but again, we can't disregard that they're very well connected.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about NatalCon 25, right? Because NatalCon 23 happened, 100 people showed up. The coverage that does exist of it is like, that's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
But something happened between the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2025. Which is to say that Donald Trump was elected president of the United States.
Not a fan.
And so all of a sudden, they were no longer on the back foot. They were no longer subjects of lib cancel culture, right? This is now a newly empowered movement that at least claims to have the ear of the White House, has a number of speakers that they have on speed dial who have gone to White House events and spoken to the president himself. People like Jack Posobiec, for example.
Right.
And so it was held in March 2025 at the AT&T Hotel and Conference Center, still in Austin, Texas. And as I was saying, this one ended up getting quite a bit of mainstream press attention. People curious about what was going on here, curious about their links to the Trump administration, those fucking Collinses, the dorks
with the weird
dorks with the glasses.
Yeah.
I think they have a great press agent because a lot of the coverage of them around this time focuses on the convention. So I think that it was like a twofer where it was like, oh yeah, you can come write about us and then you can come see our cool convention that we like to hang out at. But they appreciate the free publicity, right? Because it lends a veneer of credibility to the project and to the convention itself, even though, again, in absolute terms, this is a very small gathering. Well, let's talk a little bit about the people who spoke. Again, they're very online, and the core of the people who came back from the previous convention, the same very online people who all know each other from Twitter.
That's a good sign.
There are some other people who ended up speaking in 25 who did not speak in 23, which is to say actual credentialed academics who seem to be lost. They seem to have signed up not knowing what they were getting themselves into. Because if you watch the speeches that are like honest to goodness published academics who are in active practice at a university, they are giving a completely different energy that resembles what you get when you present a normal paper at a normal academic conference. And so it just feels very strange and at a disjunct with everything else that's going on.
No, you're right. There's like two types of different speeches at this. There are campaign rallies.
Yes.
And then there is like TED Talks.
Right.
Yeah.
And the TED Talks are, some of them are people who are insanely online. And some of them are like people who were really academic, who are in the process of becoming insanely online.
Oh, yeah.
Like one of these guys is a Princeton PhD who now just posts all the time. But, you know, the ultimate meat of this is we watched some speeches. We watched
a lot.
The material.
We watched a lot of these.
So let's start with Kevin, the man himself, Mr.
Bennett Phylactery.
Mr. Bennett's Phylactery.
I will never fucking forget that. Maybe that's, I mean, I guess props to him for that. It's very memorable and very odd.
I keep forgetting it, so I think I disagree with you.
I have like a Pokédex of freaks in my mind, though.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'll tell you one thing that I do remember, which is the way that he starts this speech off. He is so excited and genuinely excited. It's clear that he is thrilled that the White House is now aligned with what it is they are trying to do.
Yes.
It's a very congratulatory, sort of celebratory tone that he's taking, self-congratulatory, I should say. And then after sort of noting what the White House has been up to, which is just to say all the stuff that we've been talking about, you and I, June, he says this.
But yes, of course, I want my daughters to be loved and respected and to have rich intellectual lives. I just don't think the way to make that happen is to build a world where they're never vulnerable. Because the only way you can eliminate vulnerability and dependency is to abolish love.
Damn.
And that's what all this comes down to. Having children is
Biggest
the ultimate
truth
expression of love precisely because they put your heart on the line. They tie two people's destinies together irrevocably. They provide tremendous meaning at the cost of tremendous vulnerability for both men and women. And the sexual revolution is basically modern liberal society's attempt to take the other side of that trade, to build a world without love, without dependency, without trust. And it turns out that means a world without children, and eventually a world without modern liberal societies. So it's not that I think the 1950s were so great, or that I think we could even get back there if we wanted to.
I do think he thinks
but
it's
clearly,
great.
These are the stakes. We can either figure out some new arrangement, some way to make the leap and love each other again, or we can die alone, as individuals, as communities, and as a civilization.
So just to get a dunk in here real quick, you can tell these guys are almost as good at talking as they are at writing.
Yeah. No, and just like the way a lot of these, which I'm really glad that you actually distinguished pretty well between like there's actual like smart people, like there's actual like professors, and then there's these very ideologically based people. It's like they make crazy jumps in logic. Like if you don't like having children, you want no children, and you want like the earth and society to end. It's like I don't think there's a single like liberal out there that would say that that's what they want. I mean, like there's some crazy, and of course he's doing it to.
I would argue maybe the most extreme anti-natalists would be like, yeah, we need to stop having kids because there's too many people or whatever. But
yeah,
those people are. It is ridiculous to take those people and say that they speak for the majority of like liberals.
Absolutely. And there's just a theme I noticed in a lot of these talks is they do a lot of those crazy fucking leaps in logic where it's like, no, okay, I don't think that's actually what anyone really believes.
No.
Like, and of course they're just doing it they're constructing this like woke feminist liberal to deconstruct to make their points. Of course, that's obviously why they're doing that.
It's very easy to knock down a straw man,
which
obviously.
is a lot of what these ideological talks do.
But it is strange because the whole stated goal of this is to take a look at the actual current state of play.
Yeah.
How things are right now and why they are the way they are. And in a lot of the cases, that's just not the case. I mean, him being like, we need to learn how to love again? And
like what are you talking
fucking
about?
John Lennon? Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I don't really know what the point of that was. If I'm like granting him the best faith possible, maybe what he is saying is that like divorces are maybe increasing, and he thinks that like Lyman Stone, we can't have divorces. Like we need to, and of course, like divorces aren't good. Those are not good things, of course. In some cases, getting out of a marriage is good. Bad marriages, of course. But objectively, that's, I guess, like the best faith possible. But it's not like that's a new thing, or that's not like like love has always, I guess, struggled in that way. Like there's never been like the perfect era of marriage.
I would say that this definition of love, the working definition that people like this use, is that it is a form of love that is interconnected with filial piety.
Yeah.
And so you show your love through absolute devotion to your family. And I'm not saying devotion to your family is a bad thing. Usually. But there are but that's the other thing, right? Is that there is this assumption that no matter what, through thick and thin, you got to stick by your family.
Right.
And that, for my money, that's just not true. And I would imagine that is a major, if Kevin were to hear me saying this, then he would be, well, you leftoid lib cuck, go call your mom or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't think that it makes sense generally to structure society around these preordained lines of connection. Whereas I think they, conversely, see found family and all of these other things as a distortion and perversion of the natural order.
That's a really good point. And I do think that's a big concern for a lot of natalists, is the reason they talk about marriage so much. And the further right of these people talk about how they don't want at-will divorce to be legal.
Yeah.
They want to make it harder to get divorced because they think that, like, let's say there's an abusive man in a relationship, or in a marriage rather, and you have a couple of kids with each, like with your wife, this abusive man and this wife. They don't really think the wife should really focus on herself. They think that she should probably prioritize the kids in a tougher situation. If I had to guess, he probably also subscribes to that thought.
Or that if you are in an abusive situation, that the bar of proof must be much higher.
Right.
Like, I think that generally speaking, most of these people would oppose limited carve-outs in the case of extreme domestic abuse and violence.
Yeah.
But they think of divorce in other cases as being just taking the easy way out and not buckling down for the sake of the common good, both for your family, which is sort of the microcosm of the macro unit of society.
Yeah. And I don't think this is a hot take, but sometimes relationships don't work out, and that's fine. I think that's fine. Sometimes you're better off long term, and maybe both people are better off long term if you maybe just cut your losses, be like, we tried, this isn't working out, like, we need to go our separate ways. That should be a fine thing.
Yeah, which makes the thing about love so strange, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, what is love to these people? I don't know.
The way I view love and the way they view love, I don't think is the same. I say I love you to my friends. I say I love you to my partner. I say I love you. I say I love you.
I say I love you to my fellow podcaster.
Oh, I love you, fellow podcaster.
Love you, bud. Love you, June.
Exactly. And it's like there is different contexts that you can say, like, you love something or someone, or
right.
Like, it's not just like a. They're way stricter about it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think they say I love you to your friends unless they're like wasted and like, oh, I love you, like that one of thing. Yeah.
Could be. I don't know. It's hard to say one way or the other.
He doesn't really define it.
No,
he doesn't define love.
And you'll find that a lot in these videos, is that there's some real loose definition work, right? We're going to hear a lot of examples of this. And we're going to look at some of those very things now, because there were supposed to be, for NatalCon 2025, there were supposed to be sort of two phases to all of these speeches, which was, we're going to identify some big problems and we're going to propose some good solutions. And in my experience, listening to these, and maybe it's just that I am by nature somebody who looks for problems more than I look for solutions, but I was listening to what they were saying, and I feel like they too spent the vast majority of their time talking about the problems and not the solutions,
Very few people I listened to proposed any solutions at all, didn't even attempt to.
Right. But we'll talk a bit about the problems, right? Because we got problems to solve here.
This whole show is about the problems.
That's right. Josh and June save the world. The first big problem, of course, is cultural decline. What is culture? What is decline? Depends on who you ask. And again, there's some wonky definition work here. But basically, I would say, so I think I heard the word culture, our culture, more than really any other word. Maybe even more than like family or children, weirdly.
If I was truly dedicated, I would listen to every single speech and have a word tally. I would like lock in and do that. But you're probably right.
Because this is really running a spectrum from like this very vague sense of like, oh no, Western culture.
Yeah.
All the way over on the other extreme to very explicit white replacement theory.
Yeah, no, there were multiple people that talked about this openly.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Dolan himself is a proponent of white replacement theory.
Yeah.
There is multiple speeches just about essentially that, talking about migration and the fear, I think maybe not explicitly every single time, but implicitly that we need to have more white children because of the cultural decline.
Well, sometimes it's explicit. Here's Jack Posobiec.
Now look at the numbers, all right? Look at the numbers, and I don't need to go through and bore you with all of them. You all know the numbers. They don't lie. Across the West, birth rates are plummeting. Europe, America, Australia, we are not replacing ourselves. Meanwhile, those who don't share in our values, and in fact, those who despise our way of life, are actually outpacing us generation by generation. Much of it by the design of our own corrupt elites through mass immigration.
Wow, that's
as it turns out, human beings are not interchangeable units in a global economy.
Okay.
We are the children of Western civilization, and our civilization must be defended through that.
God damn.
Once again, very good at speaking there. You can hear he got a big pop. Like, it's so funny. It's so many cases where it's like they're expecting the big applause, the big laugh, and they just get like a
pitiful.
Yay.
I think, he got probably the least round of applause out of everyone, which I will say.
Something that was very interesting was I went and read some accounts of NatalCon from people who were there, and a number of them were very put off by like Jack Posobiec and the people like that. They were just like, this is fucking weird.
Yeah, because I imagine if you're just some person and you're like, oh, I love having a big family. This is like, I love God. I love my big family. There's this thing in my town that I live in called NatalCon. Wow, maybe I should go find other people, connect with them, with these people that have large families, see what they're talking about. And then you go there and they're probably right wing. These big family natalists are most definitely right wing. But yeah, they're probably not expecting like a Nazi rally.
And it was Posobiec. He was one of the guys who was right out of the gate. He was one of the first speakers.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my fucking God. That is light speed
They put the
Nazism.
weirdos up front and alienated a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, this is not normal stuff.
No, it's not.
The belief that there is like a cabal replacing us, I guess, us being white.
Again, definitions. Who are these elites, Jack? Can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, especially right now, Donald Trump is president. So is who's Donald Trump's cabal? Like, is Trump part of the cabal? There's so many questions when you get into this theory, and of course they mean like Jews or anything like that. But it's very fucking wild to just lead with these fucking people.
Some people were a bit more subtle about it, where they were just like lamenting culture more broadly. There was this guy named Terry Schilling who did a speech where he was like, and woke culture, they just hate dads. You watch Modern Family and the dad is such a goofball.
He falls on his face.
And he's like, shut the fuck up. Like,
no, that's like the type of discourse that you'll see on Twitter every once in a while, where it's like, and of course, a lot of this comes back to discourse you see on Twitter. But a lot of these people are like, the modern world, they don't like parents. We hate moms. We don't like dads. But Elon Musk, he's a dad. He's showing that you can still be a dad, and it's like, what are you talking about? Of course you can still be a dad. It's like it's constructing a world that's just not really real. It's the same victim complex that a lot of these people just tend to have with their politics when it comes to like social and culture issues.
Going back to Jack Posobiec for a second, though, again, just to sort of swing back to the extreme end.
Oh yeah.
Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad himself, came out after Posobiec's speech, and he had some thoughts about culture too.
One of the things I've become increasingly fascinated by recently is Jack Posobiec's one-man jihad against McDonald's and Pizza Hut. This is, I think, a fascinating thing, and it really tells us a lot about the concept of ideology and its effect on the modern world, because when I was young, fast food restaurants were geared towards children. This was something that families did on the weekend or wherever. They'd take their kids there, there'd be a play area, you'd have like McDonald's birthday parties.
Yeah, man.
Things like this. And that just simply doesn't happen anymore. And what we can see is that this is the effect of ideology on the way that the West has changed.
So true. I've never seen a child at McDonald's.
No, this guy. I already know this guy he is fucking entranced when he sees those AI videos of like the 1990s, where it's like, don't you want to return to the 1990s? Don't you miss the 1980s? He has like this construction of I guess nostalgia. Nostalgia can be weaponized by fascism very, very effectively. That's a big pillar.
It's one of the key tools of fascism.
Absolutely, it is. And that's definitely what he's doing here. I don't know how many clips we have of Sargon of Akkad in this, but his speech in particular is, I think, it was my favorite, not because it was good, but because I feel like it was the most illustrative of especially the culture speeches, where it's like he's sad about burger. He's sad about the fucking the burger's gone. You don't have good memories of burger anymore.
And it's this thing of, I remember in my, childhood memory of going to McDonald's and, playing the Super Nintendo or whatever. And it's like, yeah, dude, you were a child.
Of course you have that, like,
of course you thought it was magical. But you know what? It was fucking McDonald's. It doesn't do to address these on their own terms because they're not serious arguments.
No.
It's just, I miss mommy.
Yeah, they miss burger, they miss mommy. And I think his speech too, I think is the best example of someone who's like, oh, we need to change the culture. And he is of course a very far right political person. So you would think that like someone making this argument about sort of this like anti-capitalism, because he's critiquing is corporations and capitalism. Right. But his approach isn't to like abolish like capitalism, it's to do more capitalism.
Yeah, a lot of these critiques, this is a commonality that I noticed throughout, is that there are a lot of critiques made here that are facially anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
Where when you start the line of reasoning, it's like, as in the case of McDonald's, they have sanded off all of the quirky edges in favor of something that is more broadly palatable and easier to manufacture en masse. And therefore, the uniqueness, even the relative uniqueness of, different McDonald's, which wasn't a lot of uniqueness, but there was a little bit there, has been stripped away in favor of something more homogenous, right? Due to the pressures of market capitalism. Fine, whatever. I'll allow that as an argument. I don't think it's a particularly interesting argument, but like, you can take that and go somewhere with it. But that's not actually the argument that he's making. Mm-hmm. The argument that he's making is that the reason that these things are this way is that market pressures have come to exist and adapt in this way because woke told them to do so.
Yeah. And like functionally, what he really wants is what Steak and Shake is. I think we've briefly talked about it on the show before, but essentially Steak and Shake is like a far right McDonald's at this point. The way that they post indistinguishably from any far right shit poster. Like they post memes, they post like stuff in appealing to like Elon. They post pro-Trump stuff on like they put up billboards like dunking on other restaurants. Like it's a very culturally far right business at this point. And what he like sort of wants, I feel like, is a complete capitulation from the culture, from these businesses to all become Steak and Shake.
Yeah, because he wants his specific preferences, every single one of them, to be catered to.
Yeah. And
that's not how this has ever worked. The reason that when you're a kid, the fucking McDonald's play place is so cool is that you are a child.
Yeah.
And so it's such child brain thinking because their entire understanding of the world comes from, I think, an essentially consumerist perspective.
Yeah.
They only understand interacting with the world by spending money in it. Mm-hmm. They can only understand connections to that world through the marketing that exists. And so of course it ends up just being a politics of aesthetic because that's what advertising is.
Yeah.
It is aesthetics, and it is sort of being like, what is the grabbiest image or idea that we can implant in your mind that's going to make you want to buy our shit? And people like this are perfectly okay with it so long as that advertising is catering to their own preferences. They're not able to do the additional step of being like, well, whether I'm being marketed to in a way that aligns with my ideological priors or not, I'm still being marketed to. And I need to understand myself as an acting consumer agent in this market. No, it's I want burger that is not woke.
Yeah. And apparently, I guess his ultimate point is if you put playpens in McDonald's, there will be a population boom. We'll have the baby boom again, which is like
the other thing. It's
I
like,
don't think that's measurable in any real way.
Definitely doesn't follow.
No, I feel like Sargon of Akkad, he before he gives this talk, he's like, I'm a studier of philosophy. I'm going for my PhD. I'm doing all this stuff. And then it's like, he's got to be the most insufferable fucking student to work with, because this guy, oh my God.
Imagine trying to advise this motherfucker on his dissertation.
God,
Impossible.
No, I do think of all the ones I watched, he probably had one of the worst.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, other than Jack Posobiec. I mean, it was between those two.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Jack Posobiec was just like saying the same thing over and over and over again for like 10 minutes.
It felt like you were at the start of a Trump rally.
Yes.
Like he was opening for someone that was going to speak two appearances before Trump.
Whereas Sargon of Akkad was clearly trying to like really delve here into like a deep sociological idea.
He wanted to sound like an intellectual too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's stupid, so that didn't work. And the other thing too, right, is the conflict between our culture and their culture. This is something that almost everybody talked about, at least in terms of the culture warriors, right? Where it's like, we need to defend us from them. Pretty bog standard stuff, but again, this doesn't really have anything to do with the topic at hand.
No.
At all.
Not on its face, at least. Like it does. Like it inherently does. I feel like if you care about natalism in the way that almost all of these people do, you will be white supremacist aligned. You will be, because the world's, as I think we mentioned before, the world is not below, like as a whole, not below replacement level. But they don't really care about that. They care specifically about like the white populations. They bring up, I forget exactly who the one that brought this up, but they talk about South Korea and North Korea, and they talk about like the battle that will take place because North Korea is outbreeding South Korea, and they're like, oh, so we know who's gonna to take control of the Korean Peninsula in a couple of generations.
Yeah, that was actually Kevin. That was Kevin Dolan. In that first speech, he talked about ROK versus DPRK. Yeah,
and it's like this is how they're thinking of things. They're using that as like a way to look at a different example.
Yeah.
But really, what he is doing there is saying like, we white people will need to do that to stop the like Mexicans, the black people, the Muslims.
Because another thing that Dolan says in that point when he's talking about it is that Japan is, and I quote here, capitulating on immigration. Yeah. Because as you know, I believe we've talked about, Japan's current replacement rate is one of the lowest in the whole world. Mm-hmm. And so
you need to. I mean, if Japan is going to survive,
that's not capitulation. No. That's just being practical.
Yeah. And again, a lot of these people, Kevin Dolan in his speech does not like immigration. They do not think that's the solution. And of course, I mean, like on a real level, immigration doesn't necessarily solve like inherent birth rights. Like birth rates will continue to fall if immigration is a thing, but they're almost repellent to it. And of course, as we know, Kevin Dolan in his opening, or in that Substack that after he got doxxed, was like, he has animosity. He has very clear animosity to people that are not white.
Yes.
And that informs a lot of these people's politics, especially when it comes to the culture.
Yeah. So another big piece that was a common theme in these speeches from NatalCon was talking about markets and labor. And this sort of connects with what we were talking about, where it's like, it's a facially anti-capitalist thing, particularly as regards the rise of women in academia and in the workforce. Mm-hmm. I've got a clip here from Indian Bronson, who is, again, another fucking online guy. That's not his real name. But
it's not? Okay.
No, it's just...
I thought Indian was a weird first name, but I don't know this. I don't know who this guy is beyond that.
He's Bronson, but he's Indian. I don't know. Maybe I should look it up. No, I don't.
It feels unimportant. It's not important.
I feel like it. Indian Bronson was not able to make NatalCon in person, so he sent along a pre-recorded 10-minute video. And here's a clip from that.
Though the ever longer delays in prioritizing marriage which women undergo are motivated by pursuit of higher education and thus greater economic remuneration, their nature means they still look out for men who earn more than they do as marriage partners. There are well-studied analogies to this, by the way, with relative height and relative age, which are somewhat less mutable. What does this imply about a program of life where since the 1980s, more women than men have enrolled in college, and a workforce where college-educated young women now outpace men in cities in earnings until their 30s. When you put all of these things together, what's implied is that we cannot actually expect and demand equivalent participation in the same spheres of life between men and women from men and women. That is, putting them in competition with one another from their late teens through their early 30s, and still expecting that marriage and children will result is a fool's errand.
So, facially, you can take this as a critique of capitalism, right? Women are being exploited for surplus value. Men are being placed into competition with women in this marketplace. All of this is for the sake of extracting surplus labor. And then, of course, if you're a Marxist, you move to the prescriptive stage, which is to say, well, we need to move toward a workers' state where all labor is valued based on what it is that the person is able to contribute and are rewarded based on what their need is, right?
Yeah.
That's not what he's saying here. Obviously, what he's saying here is women have their place, and it is not in the workforce.
Peachy Keenan also touches on that exact same point. So does Carl Benjamin. All of these people don't really do the women should be in the kitchen, but they do a much trickier version of that, where it's like, oh, women were duped into thinking that they have this autonomy, that they should be able to have this freedom. Don't you want to go back into the kitchen? Don't you want to raise a family? It's a men's job to go work. That's like how they all frame it.
And up until they get to that last point, it's something where if you are listening, it might sound pretty, I don't know, appealing at first, where it's like, yes, it's absolutely true that one of the big limitations of second wave feminism is that women were taught to think of themselves in terms of their market value, not their labor value, not that which they contribute or that which they want to do, but based on how they can be rewarded by capitalist society for their contributions to the labor force. That's a fucking problem because that's never going to lead to self-actualization. But they do something so fucking tricky and clever here, right?
Stop short of applying that same logic to men because they believe it's a hierarchy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because of course, if you are a Marxist, this applies in equal measure to no matter what gender you are.
Of course, obviously. But to them, they have this. This I would even argue is like a cultural argument as well, because they want to they want to return to a time when like women were not in the workplace. I mean, that's obviously what the implication here is they want to maybe not force women out of the workplace, but have that cultural shift away from women working.
Right. Because the period in which they want to prioritize women getting pregnant is, of course, the period in which women would be sort of from early to mid-career. If they enter the workforce, like right out of school. And they think that And I think this is actually probably true. Like, they think that this is part of the reason that birth rates are lower. And I think that's probably true.
It definitely
is.
Because
just from a very practical perspective, if you have to fucking go to work every day and you don't have family leave policy, you don't have insurance that is going to cover you not just for like the cost of actual childbearing, but the other costs associated with it, right?
Yeah.
If you build a market where you as an individual are forced to shoulder the entire financial burden of pregnancy and childbearing, yes, like fucking of course you're not going to have a kid if you've got a job.
And that's really the really fucking annoying thing to me, is because I think looking back at a previous era, it was like it made sense when two people in a family didn't have to both work to provide a livable income to just survive. I think that's ideal. I think objectively speaking, it would be great if one person could provide for a whole family. That's not the world we live in. They don't want to fix that problem. They don't think it's an equitable problem. They think the only solution can be women should just exit the workplace.
Well, because also they can't tolerate degrowth in any sense.
Right.
One of the other speakers that I watched, a guy named Gail Pooley, his whole thing was about how like the way out is through further abundance, and that having as many kids as possible is furthering the general idea of economic abundance. The more kids we have, the better the world will be. But if you are going to remove women from the workplace en masse, that is naturally going to lead to economic degrowth. It must, by virtue of the fact that there are going to be fewer people in the workplace, which is going to reduce your GDP.
Yeah, very conflicting lines of thought here. Like they're not really finding a solution, because if they, and it seems very dominant, this sort of traditional gender role ideology that most of these people have, they're not going to have that incredible, like that. I mean, that is a triumph of like the modern age of like liberal feminism, and which is wild that they oppose it so deeply. I mean, of course, their primary issue is having children, so of course that's why. But like they also prioritize capitalism. That is what underlies almost every single one of these people's beliefs.
Well, right, because in many cases they are fascists, and I don't mean that as a pejorative. Like,
no, they
that
are.
is the ideology that they subscribe to, and so that is state capitalism, meaning that you must exist under these market pressures, and that women's main goal is going to be to be loyal child bearers in service of that regime. I mean, I want to do an episode pretty soon on the Nazi Lebensborn program. And the way that they tried to spin up basically a system by which women would be directly incentivized to have a whole bunch of kids and exit any form of participation in the labor force for the sake of advancing, the master race. These were women who the government was able to identify as being the ones who had the most favorable characteristics in sort of the Nazi ideal of, like, Aryan whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And I think that there are quite a few commonalities between that and some of the stuff that is proposed in these speeches.
I mean, not even just proposed, but the way that we've seen it play out in just the first year of the Trump administration. They're prioritizing giving funding for programs in red states, which tend to be some of the ones that are very majority white. They're targeting specific counties that are more majority white than like black.
The Department of Transportation funding, how like they, rather than providing funds to projects that would deliver the greatest public good, they are prioritizing road funding and infrastructure funding, and, like you said, those white ass counties.
And it's very explicitly, I read a piece, because this was very early in the administration when that happened. They were doing that to improve, like, and of course, like, good things. That's fine to get more funding for some of these like derelict communities, but like they're doing it very intentionally as like a political white project.
And also, to be clear, a lot of these counties are doing pretty fucking well already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would say most of them are. But
definitely.
I will say one of the ones that surprised me was a presentation by Catherine Pakaluk, who is a professor at Catholic University in D.C. And she actually talked about how there are concrete material forces that have changed that are going to stay that way. And it actually felt like I don't think she's a Marxist, to be clear. She wouldn't have gone to this fucking thing, presented at this fucking thing if she were.
She probably just didn't even know what this was.
I don't know. I really don't know. She does have 8 kids, so there is that, right? I think she probably just genuinely thinks that we should be having more kids, but also sees very clearly that there are structural forces within society that have changed.
I don't think she knows who raw egg nationalist is, though.
Doubt it. I mean, maybe we can find out. But in this presentation, she talked about how, well, she started by talking about horses and how, like, obviously once we had cars, we didn't need horses anymore. And then she analogized children to horses by being like, before industrialization, you needed more kids to do more shit, and you just don't anymore.
They were the laborers in a lot of cases.
Right.
They children died younger. People just inherently, like, people, society, more broadly, like, people died younger.
Right.
So of course that was how society was structured. You were expected to probably have like 6 kids because 2 might not make it.
Right.
That is a genuinely good point. Like, this is, I think this point is probably the of every one that we've watched, probably the most accurate in terms of like diagnosing why much more advanced, educated societies tend to have less children, because we don't really have that dangerous labor anymore. We have more office jobs. We're not as much in the fields. We're not like working with dangerous machinery. So it's there's not that need for that anymore.
And I think the other thing that was just noteworthy about this presentation was that she wasn't like, and you know why why things aren't that way anymore? Because they don't want it to be that way, right? Like, no, it was just like, practically speaking, things have changed with industrialization. What the fuck are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
But again,
interesting concept.
But
That's
she was one of those
genuinely
people where I was like, are you lost? Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. No, that's genuinely a really interesting concept. And I'm glad that she brought like some sort of professional knowledge to this event.
Another thing that was a common topic, particularly for the women presenting at this thing, was gender roles. And specifically, like, what ought to be the roles of the man versus the woman, the two genders. Because from their perspective, and this ties into what we're talking about in the previous point, a lot of what has gone wrong is that our traditional conception of gender and family has started to fall apart.
But let me quickly explain what I believe, and then everyone can decide. First, I believe that if a baby could choose, he or she would choose to be born to married parents who are their, ideally, biological mother and father. A baby would choose to have siblings, and they would choose to be with their mother as much as possible instead of hand it off to strangers to raise. And this is where I get into trouble, because I also think that mothers should aspire to be with their babies, even if they aren't able to in practicality, and not treat a baby's demands like crushing inconveniences or career suicide. And finally, yes, I think liberal feminism has mostly backfired. It promised women liberation from the patriarchy, but delivered only, really, enslavement to their jobs, genetic suicide, and a lifetime addiction to narcissism and consumerism, and you can see this everywhere on social media.
So other than the point about genetic suicide, which I think is, it sounds like a dog whistle to me.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I can't disagree with what she's saying here, at least on the surface level, but there's a lot more going on. This, by the way, is Peachy Keenan, who we talked about a little bit already. She is one of those very online Twitter influencers and talks a lot about homeschooling.
The part where she's framing up how the baby would probably want the ideal situation as possible is like, of course, like everyone wants like the most ideal life possible. And this is one of the, she was one of these people that was like, oh, the ideas. She didn't really have any solutions to any of these things.
Well, she had
like,
some really good jokes.
She did. Oh, they were kind of
pretty funny.
She got some applause. She got a couple rounds of applause or laughter rather, for some of her jokes.
Every year, for an example, Thomas Aquinas College in Ojai, California, sends out a glossy school magazine filled with student wedding announcements. In the last issue I got this summer, I counted over a dozen weddings among newly graduated seniors out of a class of 100 kids. You don't see that at Penn or at Harvard. And boys coming out of schools like this are highly motivated to make themselves into the kinds of men that one of these girls might want to marry. Girls at these schools haven't spent 4 years getting blowjob tutorials on the Call Me Daddy podcast or in body count competitions with their bisexual polycules. My son goes to one of these trad colleges. He's going to watch two of his fraternity brothers get married this summer. Not to each other, of course. That only happens at Yale.
Really generous audience.
And like she offered solutions, which is feminism is bad. Right. But that's not like
abolish feminism, basically.
Which is like the implication there, which is bad. I mean, we're in the society we're in for a reason. Feminism won the battle long term because of a reason. We didn't just fall into this.
Right.
You know? I don't think liberal feminism under capitalism is necessarily the answer.
No, it's not.
Absolutely not. But like she's proposing and a lot of people culturally and socially walk back. I mean, that is always the implication of all of these things, is that in order to, I guess, increase the white birth rate, that we need to accept that we need to start oppressing women and different minority groups again.
But that's all part and parcel of the project, right? Because that is something that ultimately benefits the people who are in control and in power. I'm also very interested in the bit about the what would a baby want that you were talking about, because I don't know that I even necessarily agree with her assertions there, right? Like,
How does she know?
how do you know?
Yeah.
You're not a baby. You're the size of an average human mother. I think, like, the point that you made about, like, well, yeah, wouldn't it be great if everything was ideal?
Yeah.
Like,
God, that'd be sick.
That'd be so fucking cool. But, like, because we don't live in an ideal world, that also means that a world where you have both of your parents and where you're with your mom all the time, that's not necessarily good. What if your mom fucking sucks?
She has bad vibes. You don't want to be with a mom that has bad vibes.
or even like, but more genuinely, like,
Yeah.
what if your mom is abusive?
Yeah.
What if your mom is a fucking narcissist?
Yeah.
What if your dad is the safe one?
Yeah.
What if neither of your parents are good and you have to spend most of your time with your grandparents or with an uncle, right? Like,
And all of this is assuming that, like, let's say women are no longer in the workplace. That's assuming that everyone's equally rich, I suppose, too. Yeah. Everyone has the equal amount of money to, like, provide for a family, that there's not people, like, in horribly, like, derelict poor households. Because, like,
Right.
like the thing is, like, you know, in this time that they keep pointing to, the, like, 1950s, there were a lot of poor people, too. We have come, like, there was a lot of poor people. Like, there was the boom, of course. I mean, the baby boom. There was like an economic boom
Right.
as well, but there was a lot of government programs. There was a lot being provided by the government. None of these people, something I noticed, none of these people, like, we should raise taxes on the wealthy
of course not.
to bring that down and, like, do programs this way. No one proposed that. Interestingly,
Government programs, which we must note, were disproportionately accessible to white people.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you look at the GI Bill, for instance, right? Like, probably the single most transformative part of the post-war society.
Yeah.
They had all of these people get back out of the war, come back home, go to colleges, a lot of them being like state universities, and basically creating the entire structure that we have lived on for the remainder of that century and the beginning of this one. The people who were able to do it were white.
Yeah.
And that meant that the capital went to them.
well, they would probably like that, though.
Of course they would.
They would love that. They should.
course they fucking
probably
would.
do. They probably do love that.
But beyond that, when I hear, well, I think the average baby would want these things, what I hear is, no, that's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
She didn't consult babies on that
You
one.
didn't consult babies on this one, because also the whole thing of, like, because life is so much more complicated
Yeah.
than this very idyllic portrayal that they conjure up, it can't account for all of those different potentialities.
And I think that's why all of these people focus so much on the culture and focus so much on the gender roles. Because if you actually were to look back to the ideal period that many of them brought up, like the 1950s, the early, like the baby boom, the best time, like in American history, when people had the most babies, they don't talk about the they don't talk about the government programs. They're looking back at this nostalgia filtered lens of, it's a time when men could be men and women knew their place. That's like that's already a distillation of, like, that period. Also, that's not entirely an entirely accurate representation of that era either. That was the early period of the sexual liberation, that the period that Kevin Dolan brought up, that he thought was a failure. Like, these people are proposing this idealized world that's ignoring so much inconvenient data, or, like, his history.
And also, they weren't there. You know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing that really gets me. It's like, they always want to call back to the halcyon days of the 1950s, before the civil rights movement.
Interestingly, yeah.
But they weren't fucking there.
Yeah.
They don't know what it was like.
Yeah, no. They probably think they know what that time period is like, because they know what babies are thinking.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
And so that's an important piece of the gender conversation. Men, women, their relative roles, and how we should all aspire to have the minds of babies. But I think another really important point here, one that we talk about a lot on this show, is opinions on gender minorities. And here, once again, is Carl Sargon of Akkad Benjamin talking about that.
And I think everyone in the room is going to be very, very, very familiar with the phenomenon of pride flags in schools.
Oh, no.
This is exactly down his line of thinking. Yes, the ideological state apparatus in the schools are one of the most important ones, because children spend such a lot of their time there. If there's a pride flag on the school, That is a conscious Marxist attempt to subvert the purpose of this state apparatus into reproducing a different kind of ideology. And of course, we see the effects of this everywhere. It's not a coincidence that I think it's something like 20% of young people now identify as not straight.
This one always drives me the most crazy because they talk about this the same way they talk about white replacement theory. It's the evil cabal of Marxists
transing your kids,
like putting up the flags. And it's like they don't consider the fact that because we live in we're a free society, we live in liberal feminism, we live in we have freedom. People can't just come to that conclusion alone. It has to be the corruption of the children.
Mm-hmm. And that these aren't, I'm sure you've seen the famous graph of people who identify as left-handed.
Yeah.
And how, like, once people were allowed to start writing with their left hand, it goes up, 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 and then it's just flat the rest of the way across.
Yeah.
Like, it is this assumption that they so often make that if a line is going up or going down, that if there are observable trends within a certain window, that trend will continue in that direction forever.
There will be the entire, he mentioned 20% of Gen Z identify as not straight.
Right.
He thinks in probably a couple decades.
It'll be 100%.
Yeah.
I would imagine you're correct.
Yeah, which is fucking crazy. And
except for our holdouts, our good Christian patriots who refuse to give way to the woke mind virus.
Yeah. But it's just crazy because I feel like it's very obvious that most of these people don't have a basic understanding of statistics because they wouldn't believe these conspiracy theories. And also the implication here, again, just like the gender roles between men and women more broadly, is that there will have to be some sort of oppression. We need to clamp down on gay people, on trans people, because they are dangerous, they are scary, they are other. We need to other them.
Well, because not only do they not have an understanding of statistics, they don't have an understanding of cause and effect.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there was this guy, Dan Hess, who gave one of these lectures. And he was talking about how in South Korea, the majority of the housing there is these really big apartment blocks, right? I'm sure you've seen them. The famous, gigantic fucking apartment buildings in Seoul, right? And he was like, you can find a correlation between apartment buildings, people who live in apartment buildings, and smaller family sizes. But when you look at single family homes, they tend to correlate with larger family sizes. And he was taking this, then basically going with that and saying, and that means we need to have more single family houses. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, if you think about the way that correlation works, if there is causation there, the causation is that when you have more kids, you're gonna want to move to a bigger house.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to be like, when you build apartments, it means that your families
children will spawn.
The children, exactly. Yeah, build more single family homes so that you can spawn more children. The children yearn for the suburbs. No, that's fucking stupid.
Also, like in this example of South Korean society, he conveniently doesn't mention that it's a very overworked society.
Right.
Every person,
for adults and for kids.
Absolutely, they work.
And this ties into the earlier point about market pressure and about how, if you want to analyze this from a Marxist perspective, you look at labor, you look at the amount of labor that is being extracted, you look at that and you say, well, God, if people have to fucking work this much, of course they're not going to have the time, the desire, or the energy to have kids.
Yeah.
If they're underpaid and they feel unstable, or even if they're reasonably well compensated but don't have the fucking energy, they're not going to have kids.
Yeah.
And you don't fix that by saying moms need to stay home. That doesn't fix the problem.
Because then, as you brought up before, the economies will shift and collapse as we know it right now. If half of the workforce left, which a lot of these people want, that is not sustainable in the current form that it's in.
And I mean, the closest thing that you could have to a reasonable solution would be to shunt the work back off onto the men.
Yeah.
And then you just have men who are even more overworked than they used to be, who never see their fucking kids.
Yeah. A lot of these people, I feel like, didn't bring up a lot of things that are actually at play for why people don't have families. And I do think, like, being overworked, stressed. I think stress is a big one. And I mean, a big part of society with all genders, is that everyone's fucking stressed. Everyone works a lot. People don't have free time. I think that is like part of it. And there no one, again, a lot of ideas, but no solutions to like actually diminish the amount of stress and work people do, which I do think is probably a big factor here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, these solutions don't address those problems, which is why they stop short of actually pointing out the real problems. And a moment before you get to the logical conclusion of the line of thought, they just say, we need to go back to how things used to be, and that will fix it.
Which is impossible.
Another example is how they talk about the environment, where they talk about how, like, now in the environment you have all of these toxic chemicals and endocrine disruptors, and, well, I'll just have raw Egg Nationalist tell you a little bit about how this works.
Chimp in state of nature never jerks off, but in captivity he does. What does this mean?
I don't know, man.
What indeed? I'll come back to this important question in just a moment. At last year's Natal Conference, I spoke about endocrine disruptors, and in particular, how these novel industrial chemicals are wreaking havoc with our hormonal systems and making us less fertile, as well as many other things. Fatter, more depressed, more cancer-ridden, stupider. I could continue.
Okay.
These chemicals,
he's
which
not
are
going to continue.
absolutely everywhere, may even make it physically impossible, as early as 2045, to reproduce by natural means at all.
Oh, fuck!
Sperm counts are plummeting.
Everyone's going to be
so
a test tube.
fast. This is the so-called Spermageddon scenario.
No! That's my least favorite Bruce Willis movie.
No, this is again yet another example though of like the line is like kind of going down a little bit. Sperm counts are like sort of declining. So like in 100 years there will be the one final sperm.
Not even 100 years. We're 20 years away from Spermageddon, according to him.
Fuck, it's that close.
2045, that's what he said.
Everyone alive will have their final sperm. Yeah. That's terrifying. But no, it's this. I'll be totally honest. I don't know if it's just a complete misunderstanding of what data is and means, or if it's an intentional sort of trick that they're doing to try to scare people, to try to make them get riled up, to sort of lead them a certain way. I with someone like the Raw Egg Nationalist, he is. I mean, it's in his name, Nationalist. That's his full legal name is Raw Egg Nationalist. Yeah. He's addressed as Raw Egg Nationalist.
Please, my father was Mr. Nationalist. Call me Raw Egg.
And he is addressed by another speaker, like when he's addressing the crowd, like he looks out in the crowd and is like, "Oh yeah, Raw Egg Nationalist." They call him that. They fucking call him that.
Weird.
I just wanted to point that out because I think that's hilarious. I guess what I'm saying is like this guy is a fascist. He is a far right guy.
Correct.
He has a project in mind, and I do think he is leading more to the intentional misrepresentation of some of this stuff. But it's hard to tell where that begins and starts.
No, I mean, you have to think about the fact that this is the guy whose proposed solution to the nutrition thing in general is to eat almost nothing but raw eggs.
Yeah, you gotta have to be a stupid guy,
which
I guess.
I don't know. Also, if you eat nothing but raw eggs, I think that's going to do things to your brain over time in the same way that it does things to your body. Yeah. I have no evidence to support this claim.
Has he stated that like eating raw eggs increases sperm? Is that like
I think that's a piece of it, yes.
Oh, awesome. That's crazy. I guess everyone just needs to eat raw eggs that'll stop the Spermageddon?
That's going to stop Spermageddon. And so that's also one of those things where it's like, these aren't, not to fucking use a cliche, but these are not serious people.
No. Like, this is a guy that I was dunking on Twitter in 2019. Like, this is like a guy that like shouldn't be here. Like, he shouldn't be at where he was. He should not be in front of like...
Oh, he should not be at NatalCon.
Well, both, but more broadly, NatalCon.
Yes.
More concisely, NatalCon. Because like, what do you think, Catherine Pakaluk, the person that you gave credit to, that was lost at this event? What do you think she thought in this speech when he started talking about like there's the plastic in our sperms now? She's probably like, what the fuck is this?
I don't know. And again, it's like there is, as with everything here, there is a grain of truth.
Absolutely.
Yes, American diets are really fucking bad. And a big piece of the problem is the very sedentary lifestyle that Americans lead, because the vast majority of American cities are fully inaccessible if you don't have a fucking car.
And there's also another truth in that microplastics probably are not good for humans. That's
right.
Probably not. We probably need to do something about that. Not even just for fertility, probably just for the overall health of humanity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to extend that one further, the reason that we have a microplastics crisis is that the food companies like Coca-Cola and Nestle, they have a vested interest in using plastic to package their products, and so they will push narratives of things like, recycling and stuff like that as being sufficient to deal with this problem, which it isn't.
And again, every one of these speakers stops short of actually addressing the baseline issues here. They go into conspiracies. They say that women need to leave the workplace. They say there's going to be a fucking spermageddon. What is that?
They say that, the Maha thing, right?
Yeah,
that RFK Jr., once we get the fluoride out of the water, it's going to fix everything. And it's just like, guys, come on.
Yeah, doesn't he specifically say that? He's like a big getting rid of fluoride
I think
guy.
he talked about the fluoride. The diaper guy talked about the fluoride.
Diaper guy.
We'll get to the diaper guy in a sec.
There's been I've discovered a lot of diaper guys recently. There's this diaper
He's
guy.
He's not that kind of diaper guy.
No. I don't mean those diaper guys either. There's this. Wait, it might be the same fucking guy. We did an episode that this doesn't need to be in the show.
Yeah.
But we did an episode of Kill the Computer recently where Caleb was like, I found an insane guy.
Is it? It's the
and
diaper
it's
guy?
a diaper guy.
Is it
I think it's the same diaper guy.
I bet it's the same guy. The one thing that I will say I found the most consistent, relatively speaking, across all of these speakers was this idea that there is a moral corrosion that is going on. And most of these speakers specifically pointed to the lack of Christian morals, because most of the people presenting were Christians. And frankly, even the people who say that they're atheists, I guess, what is an atheist? What is a Christian, right? These are questions about definition. The definitions of all of these things are very loose, but the things that they will say will make you be like, are you sure you're not just a Christian nationalist? Because you sure fucking sound like one for somebody who claims to be an atheist.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Collinses, Malcolm and Simone Collins, they are part of the rationality whatever movement, right?
Yeah.
They claim to not be Christians. They claim that their whole thing is we're just rational. But then they start fucking talking. It's you just sound like Catholics right now.
Their solution is have a very strong Catholic community that will be there to take care of your child when you have to go to work or maybe you're sick. Their solution is Christianity, and she's wearing that bonnet. Let's be so real. They're Christian. That fucking bonnet. Yeah, they're LARPing. They're doing some weird LARP shit. I don't know.
I don't get it either. And Catholics, just in general, are the majority. Like Peachy Keenan, who we were listening to earlier, the very funny one.
Big laughs.
She's a convert to Catholicism.
Those are the worst ones.
That's always wild to me. Worth noting also, quite a few Protestants, and of course LDS. We had Kevin, who is, as we've mentioned, the craziest kind of Mormon. But we should also talk now, I think, a little bit about solutions.
There were a couple. They had a couple solutions.
They have a couple solutions, and I think we ought to talk about them. My personal favorite was the presentation by Marty Bent, who started by talking about how, there is a problem with the way that we use our money, think about money. He started talking about stores of value, and I was like, oh, I know where this is going.
Can you read that slide off that you sent me earlier? Because I feel like that slide is a great encapsulation of exactly everything he talked about.
Yeah. I'll just give you the bullets for what he presents as being the big problems, right? We got the header. It says money. And then the bullets under there. Most important tool humans use. 1/2 of every transaction. 1/2 of every transaction is money. Money can, in fact, be exchanged for goods and services.
This is awesome.
Should store value over time. Corruption of money leads to increased uncertainty.
I love that one. It's if only the money wasn't corrupt.
I know. This world is so corrupt, and so is this world's money. That uncertainty increases the time preference of individuals. So you've got all those bullets. And then he goes on to talk about like a number of things that are genuine problems right now. You know, the whole like fact that you need 2 incomes to really make it as a household and have a decent standard of living in this country.
Which is a real issue. That
absolutely.
Is, yeah.
The fact that real estate is now a preferred store of value, meaning that housing is so much more unaffordable than it used to be. All of these problems lined up, back to back to back to back. What's the solution going to be? I mean, you already know what it's going to be because he pulls up a slide that just says, Bitcoin fixes this. And I was like, yes! We are going to solve the fucking
My bored ape is going to fix the world.
Apes are gone. All my children are gone. All my babies.
You know, like this type of guy.
We need to put babies on the blockchain.
You know, like I don't think I had ever seen someone specifically say Bitcoin will fix this. I always thought that was just sort of like a construction of these type of people that didn't actually exist.
As a meme.
Like as a joke, we're like, oh, these fucking idiots. But this guy.
No, he did it for real.
Actually, he's the guy.
So that's one of the most concrete solutions actually that was proposed.
Which, you know, maybe he's onto something.
He didn't go into full detail on exactly how Bitcoin fixes this, but it does.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, to the implication being that Bitcoin replacing like the dollar or something, or the Fed will do good things, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
Sure, whatever. Another guy who I really liked was the diaper guy, who we were briefly mentioning. This is a man named Michael Seifert. He owns a diaper business that is going to start selling diapers in Korea this year, which he's very fucking proud of. He's so proud.
It's so awesome to be the diaper guy.
He's the diaper guy, and he's selling like fluoride-free diapers or whatever. And he thinks that the solutions should be market-based. That like we need to have a market that has a preference toward companies that promote having kids.
You know,
now, diapers, famously a thing that the market has not had for a very long time. So
I think what he wants, instead of, when you walk into a grocery store, like bigger grocery stores, you'll see in the entrance, you'll see chips, you'll see sodas. What he wants is some lonely, just a wall of diapers. A woke lib with blue hair walks in and sees diapers instead of chips. She's probably going to change her ways. Is genuinely probably what he thinks.
Me walking up to the counter at CVS, where did my freaking Red Bull fridge go? The guy, the clerk, sorry, sir, that's the diaper fridge now.
We don't sell Red Bulls anymore.
We just sell diapers. By the way, Michael, I should say, also proposes another solution, which was a common theme here, to the point of like the Christian shit, right? This idea that like we all just need to return to a shared source of morality.
If there's not an objective sense of morality that ties our value for family at the end of the day, it's very hard to create a pro-family culture. And what I mean by that is if you go to somebody on the street and you say, we should make more babies, we should have more children, we should embrace a family culture, strong families make a strong nation, the question inevitably that they can and should ask is why? And unless you have some sort of objective morality that's pinning that belief like a root, you don't have a great answer. There's an economic answer, there's a political answer, there's society benefits, there's quality of life benefits to having more, but there's a deeper philosophical concept that will actually shift culture. I believe that's God. I believe firmly it's God. Children are a blessing, a heritage from the Lord.
Checkmate, atheists.
It's a heritage from God. When at NatalCon, in all of these speeches, when they bring up morality and they of course bring up religion, the presence of religion being needed, they make the implication that like they put a moral quantity on the act of having a child, and I think that like that doesn't really mean anything to anyone that isn't already buying into this sort of rhetorical strategy or religion in general. Like, I just don't think this is as effective as they think, because if you come up to me, if he came up to me, as he said, on the streets and started shaking my shoulders and was like, you need to have babies, right. First of all, I would be like, who the fuck are you? Like, you gotta like get away from me.
Stop touching. Stop. First of all, stop shaking me by my shoulders. Secondly, I don't want to buy a diaper from you.
Yeah, but like the overall implication is that they are putting like a moral quantity on the act of having children, which I just don't really buy. Like I think it's an action that humans can do. I don't think it's immoral or moral in any direction to have or not have a child. I think that's it's such a faulty line of logic.
But I know, and that's a very good point. Damn, we really are two bitches telling each other exactly. That is a theme that is so common throughout so many of these videos where they will be like, yeah, we're just better than everybody because of the kids that we have. Yeah. And not just that it is a moral good to have children, but that it is a moral imperative.
And it makes them elevated.
Yes. It's almost Calvinist in a sense, right? Like that we are the elect. We are the elect that have been endowed by our Creator, and our elect status is proven by the children that we have. Mm-hmm. They are a physical, tangible representation of how good we are. But as we talked about in the Quiverful episode, just having a bunch of kids, well, it certainly doesn't make you a good person, and it also isn't always what's best for the kids themselves.
Absolutely.
There's also a lot of people who just, to the point of like having a bunch of kids, which is the whole point of the Natalist Project, just talk about abundance more broadly. Yeah. I mentioned Gail Pooley. He was the one who said that like the more kids we have, the better things are going to get. He said that there's only 88 keys on. He asked everybody how many keys are there on a piano, and everybody said 88. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting number. But he said there's only 88 keys on a piano, but there are unlimited songs, which really makes you fucking think.
Have you ever considered that? Wow.
But also, that has nothing to do, like, part of, and maybe this is just my brain looking for patterns that don't exist. I don't know. I'm not saying that this guy was throwing out a crypto-fascist dog whistle. I'm just saying that thing, like only 88 keys, but unlimited songs, to me, doesn't line up with the thesis unless he's saying that 88, which of course ties into the 14 words and all that, is the future and the way that we provide for all of those opportunities. Mm-hmm. I might be fucking overthinking it.
I don't think you are. I think that is always what a lot of the natalism we're talking about is, and almost what all of these speeches have been about. Yeah. I mean, it feels has like any of the my question to you, if you're sort of doubting yourself, did you watch more of them than I did? So I'm genuinely asking. Yeah. Did any single person say that immigration was good?
No.
Yeah, I don't think that's overthinking.
I think there were a couple people who said that it is at best value neutral, but they certainly weren't like one great way to solve depopulation is to have more people come into the country. Nobody said that.
Because like I think if these people were taking this seriously, if you were to believe that they were seriously saying like, no, it's not a racist thing. No, it's just because we care about the future of humanity. Right. If you take that at face value, you would assume that their primary issue would be the sort of long-term degrowth that society would face, which I think of all of the over the course of doing this podcast, I think that's the most legitimate concern of a lower population is that, and I don't even think economic degrowth, and I don't even think that's a necessarily bad thing. But the thing that is very real about that degrowth is that a lot of programs, like government programs, will not get the same funding. There will be like bridges might start. Like the difference.
You have to start making choices about infrastructure, what gets supported and what doesn't, because we see this when parts of the country get depopulated. Yeah. You just aren't able to provide the same amount of funding to those areas because the people aren't there anymore.
And I think that's like the most real argument that any of these people could make, and none of them are necessarily even mentioning that, because immigration, of course, could be a solution to that in some cases.
Particularly the guy talking about abundance. Yeah. You would think the guy talking about abundance and how the solution is to just to go as big as possible would be like, we need to just have as many immigrants. We need to have as many everybody as possible. Yeah. That's not his arg.
No.
And I think just more broadly, right? Like we've talked about this at length, but this appeal to tradition, and not just the tradition of a shared value, not just the tradition of religion and culture and stuff like that, but also certain patterns of behavior, shall we say. Some that might be grounded in something that people who really are obsessed with the Roman Empire might think is really fucking cool in theory. Here's Raw Egg Nationalist one more time.
But it's worth remembering what happens to birth rates as a result of conflict. The baby boomers are perhaps the best example, but they're not the only one. I don't know if anybody at last year's conference suggested war as a means for reproductive renewal, or if anybody else is going to suggest it this year.
What?
But I'm happy as ever to be the odd one out.
Oh, okay.
We have to
Desperate times. I think you know the rest.
Okay,
Thank
sure,
you.
sure, man.
He is such a bad public speaker.
So, this is
he was the guy that was like, and indeed, or he was like, I can continue, indeed.
when we did our episode on the worst of all possible worlds about Sky King, we with Caleb from your co-host on Kill the Computer, we read some posts by like these weird Nazi freaks who idolize that Sky King guy as a hero, right? But then I came across the Motherlode, which was one of these guys reading his own post. Like, he did an audio recording of his own post, and my co-host Brian refers to that cadence as INTJ voice.
Oh, that's perfect.
Which is just like, they think they're fucking killing it, right? They're like, I am going to prove my superiority. Hold on, let me just read something in INTJ voice. You've got a copy of The Onion here.
Shout out The Onion.
And I'm just going to read this in INTJ voice. CIA announces that it has obtained the briefcase. Black Site Echelon, speaking from an undisclosed location to preserve the acquisition's strategic integrity. The Central Intelligence Agency announced Tuesday that it had obtained the briefcase.
I mean, you sound very serious. You sound very, very elevated. You're very elevated. And like, beyond this like horrible rhetoric style he uses here, he this solution is fucking insane.
This is nuts. What are you talking about?
Like, there's some solutions that we're going to be getting to that are like just bad and evil, but this is like genuinely one of the most insane things I've ever heard in my life. And I think he knows it's like a little crazy, but
he does.
I think
you can tell he's kind of like laughing at himself, like, haha, aren't I clever? But like
even at a base level, like I feel like he has to on some level think there's some validity to this, because this is the speech that started off the whole point of his speech, which I found as equally abhorrent as Carl Benjamin's, if not a little bit more. But the whole point of his speech is that humanity is just, we feel trapped. Mm-hmm. Men can't be men anymore because we're men are held down by society. They're stuck in this box. They can't be real men anymore. The testosterone. He brings up testosterone too.
Yeah, he's obsessed with testosterone, and of course the idea that like women have invaded these male spaces. The professional world, which used to be almost exclusively male, is now a mixed domain. That's intolerable.
Yeah, and so like this sounds crazy, but it's like, look at what Pete Hegseth is doing in the Department of War now.
No, right, exactly.
This NatalCon happened in March 2025. This was very early in the administration. This was before Pete Hegseth sort of came in. Yeah. Pete Hegseth started to very heavily lean into this hyper-masculinity, this performance of masculinity much more recently, back in, or maybe a couple of months ago as of recording this right now. This is, I feel like Egg Nationalist is very happy with how the Trump administration has started to lean into this hyper-masculinity.
He's like, I'm sure when he saw that they were going to be firing live ordnance over Camp Pendleton. Right? Camp Pendleton, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was like, now this is pod racing, and I can't understand this. You have to have such a sick mind, and I mean that in a very literal sense. Like, there has to be something wrong with your brain to think that a good solution to a problem is to go to war.
Yeah.
Especially because, like,
people will die.
What the fuck did we get out of the Iraq War?
Nothing. We have examples of modern wars. Some would argue, I think correctly, that we're still at war. There's wars happening in the globe right now. Ukraine is not having a population boom, I don't think. I mean, Palestine is surely not having a population boom.
And it's like not only is it the only thing that you will ever get out of war, particularly in the modern warfare era, is a whole bunch of guys coming back home with permanently fucked up brains.
Yeah, that's not good to raise a family with.
And
let's
I
be
mean,
honest.
that's only what's coming home. That's not even to talk about the most important thing, which is the fucking devastation that is inflicted upon the target.
Oh God!
But you have to think of other people as subhuman. You have to think of war as this bizarre, romanticized, valorous thing, and it requires you to just be completely detached from anything resembling reality.
Yeah,
which I think most of these people kind of are.
Oh, this guy for sure.
At least this guy is.
At least for sure, this guy. There's a couple other people that I would also agree with. But no, this hyper performance of gender.
Yeah.
They're performing gender is what really this is. And I don't understand how they think that continuing, as we see in South Korea, like there is a big political gender divide. There is an increasing gender political divide in the United States. I don't think having rah-rah, hyper-masculine culture in the military and just like more broadly in society is going to actually lead to more marriages. I think that'll actually lead to a decrease in marriages.
It could. I mean, or we keep the marriage level and we get a whole bunch more domestic violence.
Yeah,
I genuinely believe that that's the only possible outcome.
100%.
Last thing then, I mean, as long as we're talking about gender, I wanted to play a last clip that I think I found to be the most upsetting thing, just in terms of saying the thing straight. And I got to say, on some level, I appreciate just saying it rather than trying to couch it, because I think a lot of these people were hiding the ball. And to his credit, Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, is not hiding the ball here. He just straight up threw this out.
So what can be done? The answer to this is actually really straightforward. But we've got to say it with a lot of confidence, and we've got to say it quite unapologetically. The marginal people need to go back to the margins. The feminists, the child-free people, gay issues, trans issues, and anything else which relies upon the people who won't have children need to become, once again, low-status occupations. People to whom we don't really pay attention. These people don't reproduce the means of production, and I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. But there's a kind of parasitical aspect to this. Because what you're doing is you're sucking up the work of generations who did do the unpaid labor of reproducing our civilization, and you're taking it for yourself without giving back in return.
So this is fascism.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is fascism. He says that these groups, feminists, gay people, trans people, are not producing anything for society, which is absurd. That's an absurd stance to take. And of course, the reason he doesn't think that like any gay person has produced anything for society is because he wants a hegemonic culture that reflects the exact values he wants. He does not want any divergence. He wants everyone to have those 2.1 kids. He wants everyone to be, at least in the country he lives in, primarily white. I think in the same speech, he said he wants remigration. He doesn't want brown or black people in his country that he lives in. This is the realist example of he wants to do genocide. He wants to do genocide.
Well, because that is the only place that this kind of rhetoric can lead. At the end of the day, if you don't have a sort of Marxist conception, which sees everybody as ultimately workers of equal value who ought to be protected equally as fellow workers, as members of the proletariat, right?
Yeah.
Or even a liberal conception, this very squishy idea of God-given inalienable rights, whatever.
If he doesn't even value freedom.
No.
What he said there is a disavowal of individual freedom.
Yeah, this is in complete contradiction to anything resembling a liberal ideal, a liberal conception of humanity. And I guess the point of this episode is not to be like all of these guys are fascists. Although, to be fair, many of them are, if not most. And I think that's really fucking important. The point is, this is rhetorically how they speak in stuff that is going up on their publicly facing channels. I think it's worth noting. not all of the speeches were even put up on YouTube.
So I was actually going to bring this up too. There were two people that I thought were more notable than the others that didn't actually go up.
Yeah.
So the two people that I saw and my jaw dropped was the Kremu, I think is how it's pronounced. I don't remember his real name, but he's the guy that recently put out that piece, I believe, on the New York Times that was shitting on Zoran Mamdani, saying like, oh, he got bad grades. He's really dumb. He was basically doing like race science with Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah.
And the other person that really genuinely took my breath away when I looked at this website that he spoke there, and they didn't put his speech up, was Balaji Srinivasan.
Yes, who is one of those guys who is involved in that weird like tech colony that they're building.
Yeah, it's the network
from the Bay. Yeah,
he's one of those network state guys who believes in like this techno capitalist society that will surpass democracy as we know it. He believes that like tech billionaires will rule the world and should.
Yeah, his speech from 2023 is on the YouTube, but not his speech from this year.
Okay.
And this is also a man who is certainly connected with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
And also has the ear of our big boy president.
Yeah. And that's the thing also, which I know we mentioned already, but a lot of these people have the ear of the president. People have given speeches in the White House. So Jack Posobiec recently talked about Antifa at the White House.
Right.
I find it interesting that they even put these online because a lot of these videos didn't really get that many views. Some got less than 100 or 200. But it's interesting to see how these speeches are, again, very public. They're very public facing. They're out there. You can watch these. And they're not ashamed. A lot of these people are not ideologically ashamed. They're not really couching much of their speech.
Well, and why would they?
I think it is,
at the end of the day, they
won.
They won, and they're speaking in the same way that they post.
Yeah.
This is the big thing that they have been so excited to be able to do.
Yeah.
Woke is no longer able to suppress them from saying what it is that they want to say. And now that free speech is legal again, now that comedy is legal again, they're able to propagate these ideas freely.
Now that they have this, they've been unleashed. They have free speech again. It just sounds a lot like fascism.
It sure does. And that's probably because it's fascism.
Yeah.
So, sounds like a duck, quacks like a duck, looks like a walks like a duck. I don't know. I'm kind of tired. What should we do? What do we do about this?
I think we should. You know what I really want to do?
Yeah.
I
know you want to go to NatalCon. You've already told me.
I want to go to NatalCon, but I think it'd be really funny if we could speak at NatalCon. I think they announced 2026. We should. I don't think it'll happen because it's very clear that there is some sort of underlining ideology here.
They say that they're like, it's the marketplace of ideas, right?
It is.
They claim to be open to all perspectives.
Yeah.
And we are the preeminent natalism podcast of the left.
Yeah, and I think they should have us on. I think they should let us speak. I think they should let us have our piece.
All right. Well, Kevin, if you're listening to this, and I think you are because I think you're the kind of guy to Google your own name.
He's got Google alerts on.
illconceivedpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until then, I'm Josh.
I'm June.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.